Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 sound. Committee Room 29. 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 Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 sound. Committee Room 29. 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 Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 sound. Committee Room 29. 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 Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 sound. Committee Room 29. 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 Sound.
Public session. Okay, good afternoon members, and that is us into public session of this afternoon's sitting of the Education Committee. I'll cover housekeeping as usual and then we'll get into the main agenda. So I would advise members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online, and I would advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and that all devices are muted, and it is not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. So item 1 is apologies. I don't have any apologies.
John will be late by, he's not sure,
okay,
but he's on his way.
So apologies for lateness from John, and we also have Cara, Kathy and Julie who are attending remotely, and as usual any issues with audio or connection just let the clerk or one of the members of the team know.
Sure, I might have to nip out for 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not sure what time yet.
Okay, no, that's noted. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Okay, so item 2 in the agenda is Chairperson's business, and it's just a couple of very quick things. So I thought it was important to note that we had the first stage this week of the committee's school uniforms trousers bill. We now have an officially printed copy of the bill, which is great to see. That's a real milestone, and I think it would be appropriate time again just to thank the clerk and her team, the legal services team and the bills office for all of their support with the process to get to that point. I think we're the only committee.
Second stage on Tuesday.
Second stage on Tuesday. Yeah. Well, there you go. So we're moving through the processes rapidly, and we anticipate the ad hoc committee will be getting to work immediately after recess. So that is all very positive. Yeah. So that's now confirmed, is it? So 8th of September for the ad hoc committee.
Do we have a precise date for the ad hoc committees?
I think 8th of September. I think
the 8th
just confirmed.
Yeah.
So that really is fantastic progress. I think we are the only committee who is bringing a bill forward in this mandate so far. So we can watch this space. But
I agree with committee. All the private members built as well.
That's it. Yeah. So definitely worth noting. A significant moment there for the committee. And then I also just wanted to highlight something. It was a local event that I was at today, but they had specifically asked that I raised it at committee today to make other members aware. So I was out at Castle Gardens Primary School in my constituency, but met with business in the community who run a volunteer programme covering time to read, time to count and time to code, where they connect volunteers to schools in their own community where they come in and support kids who are maybe struggling with their literacy or with numeracy, or some who have some specialisms in areas like coding to come in and do that work. It was so positively received by the school, and the kids clearly love it. They really enjoy their time with the volunteers, and the school were speaking about how it's great to have access to a free service that's just helping some of those kids, particularly who maybe lack the confidence to read aloud in class, or to even flag that they're struggling with something in terms of their reading in particular. That one-to-one time with a volunteer, it was really positive to see. So they wanted me to put that out to all members, that to really reach out in your communities if there are people who are looking for volunteering opportunities and would like to support a local school, to reach out to business in the community. They don't have to be employed by a partner business. It can be anybody who, obviously subject to all of the Access NI checks and suitability, would be able to support a local school. So it was a very positive scheme to see that in action. So I've nothing else at Chairperson's business, so that takes us to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they need to register today? No, nothing at this stage.
I maybe should record this. 2 of my children went to Bunscoil and tSléibhe, the principal of which will be in given evidence later on.
Okay, no, that's grand. That can be noted. And should anything else arise, obviously as normal, just indicate if anything comes up on the agenda. Item 4 on the agenda is matters arising. So I just want to briefly reference the concurrent meeting of the Education and Economy Committees on the set, which we had held on the 17th of June, and we received a briefing around a range of issues around the 14 to 19 strategy, and also in relation to the Minister's proposed 16 to 18 legislation, and we didn't get clarity when we think that is likely to be seen in terms of reaching its first stage on the floor of the Assembly. And I think some concerns were raised about just how much the communication and what level of preparedness that there was between the two separate departments of economy and education. But aside from that, I don't think there were any substantive actions arising from that. Is there anything that any members want to raise from that committee meeting, or anything even that the clerk might want to add of any actions? I wasn't aware of any that were agreed.
I think there was a group maybe that the economy officials were recommending the committee might want to hear from. I'll find the name.
Okay, but we can reach out to the clerk of that committee and follow that up as required. Okay, and then the only other thing is just referring members to page 7 of their packs. We have, and that was referenced last week, the translation of the briefing that was provided from Conran na Gaeilge in relation to the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. Are members content to note and add that to the bill folder? Are we agreed? Great.
So the group that were referenced were Cyber First, a group encouraging young people and girls in particular to think of cyber as a career. So
Okay.
They just might have an interesting briefing.
Yeah, I think we could certainly add them to our stakeholder list, would be a start on that, and then we can bear that in mind for any areas where we might be looking to receive a briefing on that. Okay. That is all that matters arising, unless something else. Sorry, Deputy Chair.
I just wanted to record my concerns around the appointment of the new behaviour czar, or whatever title he has. When I was at St Malachy's College, we had a Dean of Discipline. Sounds like something similar, but in any event, I mean, there are issues with disruptive pupils in schools. There's no doubt about that. But some of that is the result of children being in the wrong placement, having unmet needs. You know, children with special needs who haven't got the right placement, or who haven't been given the proper support. And, I don't think we're going to discipline and sanction our way out whatever difficulties are there. There's unmet need in our classrooms, and we would be better focusing on that rather than giving more funding to English consultants. And that's all I want to say on the matter.
No, thank you, Deputy Chair. And I think there have been some concerns already being shared in relation to that appointment, and perhaps the potential approach of the individual. I mean, obviously we have to see what the recommendations coming out from his work are, but I know certainly in this committee we've heard lots of evidence about the value of trauma-informed and restorative practices in our schools as being the most effective to deal with many of these issues. So we would hope that that would be the recommendations we would see coming out of that work, and it's probably also worth referencing as well. I mean, all of these things are connected, and we're looking at the attendance strategy that we're waiting to see the outcomes from, and again I would hope that would be reflecting a trauma-informed restorative approach, because I know that the individual appointed to this role has said quite publicly about the need for suspensions, expulsions as being, in the mix in terms of the appropriate responses to behaviour management. So I think some of that is going to cause, a lot of teachers, parents concern. So we will watch this space, I think, unless there's any actions arising from that. I don't think so at this stage. Okay. Item 5 on the agenda then, it's the draft minutes of the Education Committee meeting of the 17th of June, and that's at page 24 of your packs. Can I seek members' agreement that the minutes are a complete and accurate record of proceedings? Is that agreed? Agreed. Just get a copy of those. I can do them just on block, and then I'll sign them both. There's also the draft minutes of the Joint Concurrent Committee of the Economy and Education Committees, also from the 17th. That's at page 4 of tabled papers. Can I also get agreement that those minutes are a complete and accurate record of proceedings? Are we agreed? Agreed. We don't have the other ones to sign, that's fine. Okay, so item 6 on the agenda, this will be a shorter item than as detailed in your packs. We had originally scheduled a briefing with the Department for Communities, but the decision was taken that based on the correspondence that we have from the Department in relation to the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill, which is at page 37 of the pack, which provided an answer to the questions that committee had asked in relation to the impact of any payments made under the provisions of that bill, any impact that it would have on other means tested benefits other than universal credit. So that is dealt with comprehensively in that correspondence. Also in relation to the bill, we've had further correspondence from Unison, which is at page 9 of tabled papers, and a briefing paper from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation at page 26 of tabled papers. So if I could just speak to the correspondence from DFC first of all. It was the correspondence that I think we'd hoped we would receive first time around, that covered the breadth of the committee's queries, and it confirms very clearly that any legacy benefits, carers allowance, and it also includes state pension credit in there, will not be impacted by any payments made under the provisions of the bill, and it was a very clear and straightforward assurance. So I was glad to receive that, and there were certainly no other questions that I have in relation to the bill in relation to impact on welfare benefits. So I'm happy if the bill sponsor wants to speak to that, and then if there's anyone else wants to add any comment, and then we can dispose of that item.
Yeah, mine is just to thank the officials for the time that they give me. We had run through all the questions that I may have had, or what unforeseen consequences could have been, and they were brilliant, I have to say. So I'm glad that letter came in and that everyone can see that, so there won't be any knock-on effect. And yeah, just we can push on now.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item at this stage? No. So other than that then, are we content to note the correspondence and add the other items of correspondence referred to the bill papers? Agreed? Okay. So the next item on our agenda, we're obviously reaching much sooner than intended. I'm assuming our Youth Assembly witnesses are not available at this stage.
They asked for a 5-minute heads up, so
okay.
We don't think they're.
No, well, that's fine. Well, I think if we move to correspondence,
we'll
we'll move to correspondence, and then we'll see where we are. If we're not ready for the witnesses after correspondence, we can cover other items in the agenda, which include consideration of the both RSE and Special Educational Needs Inquiry reports. So we have correspondence for you, which is item 14 in your agenda, so at pages 232 to 363 of your packs, with a summary note included at page 230. So as usual, we'll deal with anything now that requires a committee decision or discussion. Other than that, it'll be as per the summary note. So item 14.2, page 232, is correspondence from a primary school regarding an investigation into governance and stakeholder engagement on their uniform policy. Now, I wanted to just be clear that the letter was quite clear that it wanted to retain confidentiality, so I don't want to name the school, but I would want to suggest that it may be worthwhile sharing the content, but not the details of the correspondent in terms of their name, with the department for a response. The department are the ones under the legislation who have responsibility around non-compliance with the school uniform guidelines. And I think as long as we would get consent from the correspondent, they're happy for that to be shared. We could perhaps dispose of the item in that way if members are agreed. Agreed. We agreed. Okay, item 14.3, it's correspondence from a teacher to the department, but copying in the committee with concerns about the process for contributing to the review of the RE core syllabus. Given that we have just been CC'd, I think it would be, as we've done on the previous items, register our interest with the department and request sight of the response when it's available, if we're agreed. Agreed. Item 14.4, page 254, it's a reply from the department regarding the briefing from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists on the SEN regs. So I'll open up if members have any comments, but my proposal would be that we forward that to the Royal College for their reference, unless there's any comments. No? Agreed. Item 4.5, page 257, it's correspondence from the Committee for Justice regarding the SL1 Special Educational Needs and Disability Tribunal Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. So the Justice Committee, this is really just to note, we need to seek agreement to on one action, but the committee has agreed to postpone its decision on these regs until our committee, the Education Committee, has come to a position on the DE regs. That the two sets of regs are connected to each other, the Justice ones effectively being the outworking of the DE regs. So can I get members' agreement that we will keep the Committee for Justice informed on our progress with the Special Educational Needs Regulations? Agreed. And also, just as by way of an update, the Department have been in touch to advise that they will hope to give a time frame soon in which they anticipate for the full engagement with the Children's Law Centre around the regulations to take place. And I know we're keen to have sight of that before we take any further steps on the regulations. So are we agreed on that? That's just really to note the second section there. Item 14.8, page 262. It's a copy of a reply from the EA to the ABSA and EBSNA NI Parent Support Group. Again, this whole issue around EBSNA is one that the committee has been interested in, so happy to open up for comment, but otherwise I would be proposing that we note at this stage as that correspondence has been provided to those groups for agreed. Great. I did want to also ask, I mentioned the attendance strategy earlier in the meeting. I would want to propose that this might be a good opportunity to seek an update from the department on the progress with delivering the attendance strategy, as that consultation is closed, and I'm not aware of where that sits, if we're agreed. Great. Item 14.11, page 271, is correspondence from PolicyWise regarding generative AI in schools. So this is a Open University group stating that they believe there are variances in the guidance to support generative AI in schools across the UK and that Northern Ireland lags behind. I would be content to note, but happy to open up for members' comments if they have any on this. No, content to note at this stage. Okay.
Just to note, conflict of interest, because I sit on an AI ethics board. I didn't think AI would be mentioned today, but just
no problem, Cara. I should probably just be bringing you in every time AI is raised. So no, that's absolutely fine, and that can be noted. Okay. So other than that, are members content to dispose of correspondence as per the summary note? We agreed. Okay. Are we ready for Youth Assembly, or move on to the next items?
They're here, aren't they? They're just gathering.
Okay. Okay. No problem at all. So just while we bring the witnesses through for item 7 on our agenda, and again this is the first of two briefings today from the Youth Assembly, this one on the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. So I would refer members to the Clerk's memo at page 40 of the pack and the Youth Assembly report, which is at page 42. And we'll have some Youth Assembly members coming through, and while they're being brought through, I have noted that joining us today is Emily Murray, Saul Wilton, Sarah Agnew, Oren Carlin and Tamila Stougait. I think I've pronounced that correctly. And so we'll wait for them to come through.
It's looking like you're enjoying the weather. Hands empty.
Absolutely. You can blame them.
Sneak out.
Yeah, I think the clerk's just going to maybe check all's is okay with the witnesses coming through.
We should move on to forward work programme.
I wonder, yeah, whether we should, yeah. They're coming through now. Okay.
Everybody went for a precautionary pee.
Right. Okay. Well, it's always a good approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we just do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, here we
Here
are.
we go.
Oh, here we are. Hello. Okay, so look, just while everybody is getting seated and settled, I've already gone through the Youth Assembly members who are joining us today, so you're all very welcome today, and we really appreciate your time in the committee. We want to just be really clear from the outset, we really value the input of the Youth Assembly, and it's always a pleasure to be able to engage with you and to hear your input. And I think particularly when we come to legislation, it's so important that we are hearing your perspective. So thank you for your time today. Also appreciate this probably is your first time presenting for some of you to a committee, so you may well be feeling nervous, you may not be, but if there's any questions that are asked that you need anyone to repeat, just ask. If there's anything that you don't feel you're in a position to answer, it's okay to say that you're not in a position to answer that. Please feel free to get any clarification you need on anything that any member is raising with you. So this briefing, as I said at the outset, is in relation to the holiday meal payments bill. So I'll make a start, and I just wanted to really sort of set out, your briefing is really very clear that it sets out very strong support for this bill, and that the Youth Assembly members, it came through quite strongly, felt that the intervention proposed in the bill should be a priority. And I'm happy just to open up to any of you who wants to take this. Can you just set out in a little bit more detail why you think this bill is important and why you think it is a priority to take it forward?
Well, 95% of members said this should be a priority. I'll begin by providing some background to the Youth Assembly. The Youth Assembly established in June 2021 and is made up of 90 diverse members aged 12 to 16 from all constituencies, with representation from Section 75 groups including gender, sexuality, disability, race, political opinion, plus care experienced young people and those on free school meals. My fellow Youth Assembly members and I have been in our roles since November 2025. On the 19th of June, we met online with Danny Baker, MLA, to consider the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. Today, we'll represent the key findings from that discussion. The full report has already been sent and should be in your packs. The Youth Assembly had a particularly strong interest in this issue because it aligns directly to our own committee work on the cost of education. In that project, members have been examining the financial pressures faced by families, including the cost of food, uniforms, and transport. Evidence we have heard consistently highlights that food costs are one of the most significant challenges, especially for families in low incomes. This has helped build our understanding of how financial pressures during school holidays can impact young people's well-being and the ability to fully engage in education. Members were particularly conscious that poverty has a significant and lasting impact on young people, and that early intervention is key to preventing those effects from becoming more severe over time. I will now hand over to Oren, who will begin by setting out the Youth Assembly's views in relation to the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill, starting with awareness of holiday hunger and views on the current system.
Good afternoon. My name is Warren, and I'll begin by discussing the awareness of holiday hunger and the views on current school meal provision. 58% of Youth Assembly members said that they have seen or heard of young people struggling to access enough food, highlighting that this is a real and visible issue in communities across Northern Ireland. Members shared both personal experiences and observation of peers going without food or relying on very limited options. Some also highlighted stigma, inequality, and normalisation of food insecurity in certain areas. Some Youth Assembly members also had direct experience of the holiday food support provided during the COVID-19 pandemic. Members reflected that this support can make meaningful difference to families and help reduce financial pressure. Reinforcing the importance of continuing a similar approach, we then explored how fair it is that free school meals stop during the holidays. No members felt that the current situation is fair, emphasising that the need for food does not stop when school closes. Many members explained that holidays can increase financial pressure on families, especially where parents must provide additional meals and reduce working hours for childcare. Overall, members believe that the current system does not reflect the realities families face and change is needed. I will now hand over to Sarah, who will discuss how support should be delivered and whether families should be trusted with payments.
My name is Sarah, and the next area we will be exploring is how support should be delivered and views on trust and flexibility. Youth Assembly members showed a preference for direct financial support. 58% said that payments would be the best way to support families during the school holidays, compared to the 25 who preferred food programmes and the 17 who chose vouchers. Members emphasised that cash provides flexibility and allows families to meet their individual needs, including dietary requirements and personal preferences. They highlighted that vouchers can be restrictive and inconsistent, and that food provision may not always be suitable. Members also raised concerns about stigma. They highlighted the more visible forms of support, such as food banks, vouchers, or meal provision, can make young people and families feel singled out or embarrassed, which may discourage some from accessing support at all. In contrast, cash payments were seen as more discreet and dignified, allowing families to access support without drawing attention to the circumstances. This aligns with the evidence presented by the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People, who, in evidence with the committee on 17th of June, highlighted that having considered a range of models, direct payments were the preferred approach as they best uphold the dignity of children and families. Another key issue we explored was whether families should be trusted to use the payments appropriately. The majority of members agreed that families should be trusted to use payments in a way that supports their children. Although some members raised concerns about potential misuse, members suggested that such instances should be addressed through existing services rather than restricting support for all families. I will now hand over to Emily, who will discuss funding and whether this should be a priority.
My name's Emily, and I'm going to discuss funding and prioritisation of the bill. When asked about funding, the majority of Youth Assembly members agreed that the scheme should be funded through the Department of Education's budget, recognising the link between nutrition and the ability to learn. The department has already had responsibilities for free school meals, so it makes sense that this would fall with their responsibility. Members highlighted that children cannot fully participate in education if they are hungry, and linked this to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. In particular, members referenced the right to an adequate standard of living, including access to food under Article 27, the right to the highest attainable standard of living and health under Article 24, and the right to education under Article 28. They emphasised that these rights are interconnected and that failing to address food insecurity risks undermined a child's ability to learn, develop and thrive. While members did not focus on the exact level of payment proposed in the bill, there was clear view that any support must be equal to the value of free school meals payment during term time. Some members recognised the pressure on the education budget and suggested that the issue could be approached in a more collaborative way across government, given that holiday hunger affects education, health and well-being. Members highlighted the potential for shared responsibility across departments. However, members felt that the Department of Education should take a leading role in coordinating this work, given the clear link to children's learning and educational outcomes. Whether asked if money is limited, this bill should be a priority. 95% of members said this should be a priority. Members emphasised that food is a basic need and should be prioritised accordingly. I will now hand over to Tamila, who will conclude on behalf of Youth Assembly.
My name is Tamila, and I will conclude by summarising overall views on the bill. We understand that while the bill may not be perfect, there is a clear willingness to support its overall aim and to see its progress. When asked whether the Assembly should pass it, 90% said yes. Those who voted either not sure or no suggested that the bill should actually be expanded, particularly through eligibility, scope and funding. Members clearly recognise the impact of food insecurity on young people's well-being and education and believe this bill is an important step towards addressing this issue. When asked what one change they would make to improve the bill, many members said it should go further by expanding eligibility or moving towards a more universal approach. There are particular concerns about families who are just above the current threshold but still experiencing financial pressure. Members emphasised the importance of ensuring that the bill applies consistently across all stages of education so that no child is excluded due to age or school setting. Members also highlighted some practical considerations around how the scheme would operate. One such question is around the frequency of payments, as more regular payments may better support families in the managing costs. In Clause 2, there is a concern that the relevant periods mentioned does not include bank holidays and other school closure days, which could leave gaps at times when families still need assistance. While introducing and managing the scheme to include these days may be more difficult to administer given the differing days on which schools chosen to close, this surely can be overcome. In our discussions, some members pointed to Scotland, where all children in Primary 1 to Primary 5 are entitled to free school meals, regardless of their income. Members saw this as a potential model for reducing stigma and ensuring support reaches more young people who need it. In summary, the Youth Assembly supports the aims of this bill. Members believe that no child should go hungry during school holidays or any school closure, and this legislation has the potential to make a meaningful difference. Thank you for listening, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you to all of you, and I think maybe it's the heat in this room. I just launched straight into my question and didn't ask you to give your opening remarks. So thank you for understanding the processes of committee better than I do. So I'm glad that you were all here to keep me right and delivered your presentation. I thank you for setting that out so clearly. My first question was, as you heard, to set out why you feel this is such an important bill, and I think your opening remarks there have covered that in detail, so I'm not going to revisit that. I wanted to ask in a question, Emily, and it was particularly around I think it possibly was actually Sarah who referenced the issues around the best method of making the payment. There has been some discussion, both when this bill was being debated at second stage and here in committee, around there being some sort of risk attached to going with a cash-based payment, though you were quite clear that you felt cash-based payments were the right approach. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you think that is the right approach for the bill?
Yeah. Obviously because vouchers, obviously there's a stigma attached to it, but it's more cash is more discreet, as everybody's paying with cash, nobody sees you going into the shop with a voucher. It also allows more choice through cash as well, because a voucher can only be for certain things, and it allows more range, it allows more choice, especially for people who have dietary preferences and needs that they need to be met. But we feel like cash would be better because it just reduces the stigma of poverty as well, and it allows them to go into the shop with dignity, and it allows them. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. I think that's important to hear you just expand on that issue, and maybe just ask one other question. A lot of schools that I visit, I know that school leaders are really keen on anything they can do within school to reduce the stigma around any children receiving free school meals, so that it should just be seamless and nobody should know who's getting free school meals and who is not. Is the issue around stigma around receiving free school meals, is that something that you would say is still something that young people face in schools, or has that been largely dealt with?
I think because now with technology it's easier for people to not know who gets school meals, because in the past it used to be you get like different tickets for if it's like free school meals or not, but I think now because it's like a cashless system in most schools, not many people know, so I think technology has helped in that way. Not many people know who gets school meals.
It would be slightly odd to maybe then move to a situation where you potentially stigmatise people for payments made in the summer when they're not experiencing that in school.
Yeah.
I mean, that does make sense. No, thank you for addressing that. I wanted to pick that up as it has had a fair bit of discussion in committee at different stages. So no, that's all the questions from me. I'm happy to pass over to the Deputy Chair and then we'll open up to them.
Okay, Chair, I'm going to allow Danny to take the lead on this.
Okay,
Thanks.
no problem. Any other indications then from members at this stage? Danny, do you want to go first? Or?
I always like going in last, but
Danny, there you go. Danny's going to go first.
Thank you, because you said everything that I actually say, and all of it. I completely agree that it doesn't go far enough. It is only one piece of a wider puzzle. I was very interested in the 10%, because it says 10% didn't agree with it, but it was the fact that 10% didn't agree with it because it doesn't go far enough. I think that's a real powerful statement. You know, we need to be doing even more than just what I am proposing with this private members bill. Of course, we need to work towards universal free school meals as well. We definitely do, but this would always be separate to universal free school meals, because this will always be needed for a cohort of children. So I suppose my question to you would be, do you have any personal experiences of classmates, peers who would then return to school, and maybe like that impact that it has? Maybe there's a lot of poverty at home, malnourished, coming to school and then trying to catch up, trying to I see it as, how can you be focused on an education when you're hungry, especially over like a summer period, nearly 9 weeks.
My cousin has experienced that she gets free school meals. My cousins, their mum is the hardest working person ever. She relies on the government to help her get money. During summer breaks or any holidays in that matter, she struggles with getting food due to the fact that she would not often have enough, as she has to cover rent and other important bills. My cousin has often been bullied, not just by classmates but by other people that she knows in our family, for having free school meals, which is absolutely unacceptable, as you cannot judge someone else's financial state. My aunt and I have discussed something way before this bill was ever introduced about what she would think about this if this ever was introduced, and she responded that she would positively want this to happen, as it could help her pay her bills, help her pay her rent, and help her get clothes, basic necessities for her children.
Thank you. Yeah, and that, I think that's the importance of the bill, is to try and lift people out of poverty and give young people opportunities that, you know, my kids will never have to experience that there. But when I was back at school, I received free school meals, and I remember it was back in the day when you had to go up and collect the ticket, and when you were in primary school it was okay because you didn't pick up on it, but when you're in the secondary school you fairly picked up on it. And then, you know, when you're growing up, all my friends were all poor, we just didn't realise we were all poor as well, but you get by.
200 yards of the roundabout.
So for me, I think you've covered everything. Like, it's fantastic that you have a real understanding of what I'm trying to do here as well, and even the pitfalls. If I was critiquing my own bill, that's exactly how I critique it as well. It doesn't go far enough, but it's definitely a start, and I do believe education is the driver for it. And when it does come down to the funding side, I make the point, I say, look, I get it, it'll put pressures on other things that maybe a minister wants to do, but I think this is the priority. But other departments need to be doing more. Rather than sharing this out, I actually think they should be coming up with their own ideas and making sure we take another piece of the puzzle towards ending child poverty. I'm going to ask one wee favour of you then, so I'm not getting too far ahead of myself, but if, and it's going well, if I get this over the line and through final stage, would you join me in the hall, and we'll do a big massive picture to celebrate that day should we get there? And I'll give you a commitment, if I come back in the next election, I'll work with you towards more legislation around ending child poverty, which could be universal free school meals.
100%.
Thank you. And I love that straight answer straight away in there, 100%. That's a great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. If only all our witnesses could be as straight to the point in their answer, we'd get a lot more done. David, you'd indicated next.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks for your presentation so far. There was some important points in there. I think it was yourself that said about families who just miss out, not just in this, but actually you find in any sort of welfare sports, quite often with the same bars being used and the same criteria being used. Working families quite often who miss out on everything and find themselves less well off than those who get support as a result, and that feels unfair to many of them, and it's been expressed to me many times, and also undermines the sort of principle that those who can work should go out and work and see the benefit of that work, whilst supporting those who aren't able to do that. But there was points made there also around this would allow people to help pay the rent, to get clothes. Danny talked about lifting people out of poverty. Those are all noble aims, and aims I think everybody would share. My problem is that I feel that I know that those are responsibilities of another department of government, the Department of Communities. Can I ask, and I think how we do these things does matter. So when we talk about educational supporting the food, supporting people's educational development and so on, that's not true. I know we can draw looser lines, but by and large that's not true of a payment within the summer. And my thought is that is a welfare payment. That's a payment that should be there to support families who cannot afford basic needs, and they should be getting a level of welfare that allows them to do that. Can I ask why you think specifically the education department, that with that in mind, then should be the lead department, or in this case the sole department?
Well, the majority of members said it should come from the education budget because there is a link between food, learning and outcomes. If you don't have food and you're hungry, you're not going to learn. I know that, and I'm sure you all have experience. It's like, you don't take in information when you're hungry.
So I agree with that. I just think sometimes we're talking past each other when it comes to this particular bill, because that is certainly true of free school meals, which I support. What I'm saying to you is why a holiday hunger payment essentially is specific to an education department rather than the Department of Communities. I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be done. We shouldn't be feeding hungry children. Of course we should. But why the education department during a school holiday period?
Well, the Department of Education already fund free school meals, so they should continue to extend it out. The Youth Assembly have said that if it does need to come from other areas, that can be facilitated, but only as a last resort. There are other areas that could be cut down upon to fund free school meals over the summer, because as we said, 95% see it as a priority.
I think we're looking at an education budget next year that's going to be facing pressures up to £600 million. That means there's a black hole in the education budget for £600 million. So that is the context in which we're looking at this, and pressures on education specifically. So that's why it is so important, I think, that we look at what budget this should be coming out. I put a suggestion previously, and I think someone touched on it actually, this cross-cutting. The problem I see is that we're not having that interaction at the executive. Those from Danny's party, and Danny's brought this with genuine motives, but even those who applied to in Danny's party have paid nothing into this other than lip service. So would you not agree that it affects health, arguably more importantly in terms of health? We need to see help from the finance minister in terms of supporting that. We need to see help from the communities department, which that's my party, but I think it's the most relevant department in terms of looking at this. I'm not trying to shirk that responsibility. Those departments all have a role to play. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and as we say, but that should be a last resort, and that's what the young people have fed back.
I take your point. I wouldn't say that it should be a last resort. I think that's a good way of doing government, where departments who have a responsibility all work together. It's something that we work on constantly in this committee. And I understand why all of you and all of us want to see this need in society met, but I'm just not sure that education department, with the pressures it's facing around school estate and a whole ream of other things, say in education, should be a department that's now responsible for making welfare payments. I just want to make, does anyone else want to make a comment that hasn't made a comment yet, just to give you the opportunity?
I think it is.
Brief line to finish, Emily, that would be great.
It is definitely a cross-government thing that the different departments should work together to help. But it falling under the Education Committee is that you already fund free school meals, and a programme like this has been brought up during COVID. Whenever COVID went off, you provided free school meals for those who cannot afford it. And for the school summer times when we know schools are going to be off, but these children still need to be fed. Poverty does not stop when school ends. They still need to be fed, and if you are already providing free school meals, why a weekly or monthly, however you would like to discuss how to pay it, payment could be given to these families who need help, why that couldn't be met?
I appreciate the response. I would just say the COVID thing was an emergency response, and COVID, lots of things we done in COVID that was necessary to be done shouldn't necessarily be the model for things in the here and now, I would suggest, but thank you very much for your response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Julie, you'd indicated next.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak, and thank you all for being here today and for your really passionate and articulate answers. It's been very encouraging, and just to be clear, I fully believe that there is not one single member of our Assembly, or probably even countrywide, who doesn't want to see children with adequate food. Like, you know, I don't want to be worrying about where children's next meals are coming from. And I really hear some of your points. I think you've been very, very articulate. I do share some of the concerns that David has expressed. And I really wanted to know just your opinion and your thoughts on, if the bill were to pass, how do you foresee education in terms of the budget balancing out with competing needs, or maybe even if there's another emergency circumstance or urgent needs? So I'm just really interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
It's not something we really discuss as Youth Assembly members, but we did think that we could look into things that are maybe as important and maybe it's not as big of an issue. For example, the mobile phone pouches. We know that you're rolling out a lot of money to trial those. Obviously, it's an issue, but children being hungry over the summer is obviously a bit of a bigger issue, so that could be looked into more.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you for that. And one of the things around the mobile phones is that just hasn't been like an idea that we've pulled out of the air in terms of the Education Minister. That's based on a lot of evidence around mental health and also about learning. I actually come from a teaching background as well, and also I can be terrible for doom scrolling, so I do know the effects that a mobile has on my own concentration and different things. But listen, I hear your answers, and you've articulated very well to David as well some of your answers which were similar to my questions, so thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thank you, Julie. Michelle, you'd indicated.
Thank you, and thank you, folks. As usual, you always provide us with some really interesting insights, and I think your presentation was very mature and very well reasoned, so thank you for your briefing as well. Just going to pick up on a couple of the points to get that have been made already, just to see what you think about a few other perspectives on, for example, that this isn't a responsibility for education, that kind of concept that if the kids aren't in school, then the obligation of the Department of Education to them in that period doesn't exist anymore effectively. In your experience, I know I'm a mum, and my kids often during school holidays get homework to do. They're often preparing for exams. Those exams and that homework is set by the teachers in the school. In that context, do you think that helps make the case for why the Department of Education continue to feed those kids during their holiday periods so that they can actually carry out that education work?
I don't see how a child could be expected to revise or work to a standard that's actually going to benefit them educationally if they're focused on needing food and they're focused on being hungry and they're worrying, oh, where's my next meal going to come from? That's going to be pushed in front automatically of any homework or educational goal that they're trying to achieve.
I'd like to pick up on Saul's point as well. Me personally, I've just finished my last year of GCSEs, and whenever we finished year 11 last year, we started our next year of work just before we went off for the summer, and we were told to continue looking over our stuff over the summer so that we would be prepared to go land with our feet running into our next year to get ready for our mass bulk of GCSEs at the end of the year. And I think that it should come partially from especially from the education department, because even if maybe not for all years, but especially up to GCSEs, if we're having to do the extra work over the summer to look for GCSEs, to work hard towards our exams, that no one should be put at a disadvantage for them, for their future. And so it should be continued that people should get money to feed themselves. If they can't afford school meals, it should be brought forward that they should be paid so that they can work to the best of their abilities to have the best possibilities for their future as well.
Yeah, I suppose the department, when they're measuring educational underachievement and they look at schools and success, one of the measures they look at is GCSE results. You've got a cohort of kids then who aren't having a level playing field with everybody else during that holiday period, and not just, they are effectively still they're still involved in education even if they're not in the school itself. I'm going to ask just another wee point again. Just there was reference to the COVID payments being an emergency situation. Do you think you can make a case to say that child poverty in of itself is an emergency situation? So we should use a method here or a scheme that has been proven to help in such an emergency. It's worked before, it can work again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to say anything more about that, or I'm glad, do you agree?
Child poverty is an emergency situation. People are being disadvantaged. They are coming home. Just to speak personally, once again, I have a friend in my year, and they have mentioned about there being a lack of food in the house. That they may be having they will make one pot of noodles, and that will last them their breakfast, their lunch, their dinner. They are having to live off that little food, whereas me, I gratefully am from more privileged. I can go into the cupboard and I can take a snack whenever I want it. My mum will make me breakfast, will make me dinner, will make me that full nutritional meal that they may not get to have. And so the COVID scheme, yes, COVID came in really rapidly and was an emergency situation, but the scheme at COVID proved that it can be done, and it can be done again, as child poverty is such a serious issue and it just has to be dealt with. And if it has been proven to be possible, so it can be done, and it can be done to help those children.
Picking up on that, and if this bill does pass, this will ensure the young people have the nutrition to stay healthy, learn effectively, and in the end they can reach their full potential, which obviously without this it will be harder for this to happen, because the parents will have to come out of work to feed them, which means they'll lose money, which will make it harder. So this bill will really just help them in general.
Thank you very much. As I say, your points are all, again, that illustrates really thought through and really mature. So thank you all very much for the contributions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle. Cara, you'd indicated next.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can all hear me okay on your end. It's such a privilege to have you all with us today at committee. I know Saul is based in my constituency and we share a youth club, which is great, and you've all been so articulate this afternoon, and I think Michelle raised a fantastic point. A big aspect of this is the summer schemes our young people take part in, the extracurriculars. We want to make sure their tummies are full and they can focus and really have those opportunities to develop outside of school as well. I've really supported every point that you've said today, but I do know out there are voices from taxpayers saying this is ridiculous, this bill shouldn't go through, it's expensive. What would you say today to those who are against this bill, who take that sort of line when it comes to holiday hunger?
Well, obviously they maybe don't have children and maybe don't understand how big of an issue it actually is, and if something isn't done about it more now, there's going to be more people that's going to be in poverty, so it's going to cost the government in the long scheme more money in general, because more people who as children aren't getting the support they're needed is going to go into poverty later on in life, causing the government more money. So I think it needs to be tackled now at the root to get it sorted out, so that there's more money for the economy and more money for other departments.
Picking up on that also, this bill, it will not just help the children of today, but the children of the future who will also need this help. And in the end, we never know, this could also, this could this will help children all through its future, meaning that it's not just the 90,000 now, but who knows how many this will help. Could go into the hundreds of thousands, but yeah.
Adding on to that, the taxpayer...
Absolutely. I think it's really that future-proofing piece. Oh, sorry, go on ahead.
The taxpayers who are disagreeing with this bill probably haven't thought of the proper aspect of it or have thought about this much. If you think about it, why would you disagree with a bill that could help children in poverty with their education, with their future, helping them get into good jobs, helping them get into scholarships of university if they can't even study because of the lack of resources, lack of food, lack of drinks, lack of anything? Because children in poverty are also people too. They have emotions as well. And I know that if I was a child in poverty, hearing about this bill being brought up, I would want this to happen, because it won't only just help me. It would help every single child in the Northern Ireland country. It would help the parents so that they could help pay for other things as well. It could help every single person that would get 3 school meals and everybody involved. So taxpayers who are thinking that this is not okay, this bill should not be passed, they need to think about about what their situation would be like if they were a child in poverty. Poverty can mean other things. It doesn't mean that they have a house, they just can't afford to have food. It could also mean that they are homeless out in the street. They could only eat stale bread or maybe stuff off in bins, etc., etc. It could also, they would want a free warm meal provided by the education that the education cares so much about. But if they don't, lost track.
No, you're absolutely spot on, and thank you so much for your passion. Everyone on the panel, I think you can really tell it's coming from the heart. And I know when I haven't eaten and I have to focus at work, you can even get hangry. So I think from an emotional regulation, behavioral aspect, making sure our young people are fed helps them focus. And yeah, I think that's all part of it. But no, all very articulate young people, and we've got our listening ears on today, and we're really grateful to have you share your lived experience and the experience of your classmates as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Cara, and I have an indication from John.
I'm sorry I missed the start of your presentation. I was at City Hall and the traffic was just mad, and I sat for about 30 minutes.
You did a sat-nav to get here?
And it is true, I then tried to take a way round the traffic, and could I find a way? So the sat-nav was on. So I do apologise. I did read your written brief though, and thank you for coming, and your passion and the quality of your briefs. But I want to ask a couple of questions. Children being fed, it is universally accepted that every child has the right to have quality food, the best opportunity, a level playing field. The question is how we achieve that, because it strikes me that the free school meals is an education policy at school, but once you widen it out, it becomes almost like an income replacement policy and a wider benefits issue. Let me address one specific point. In your written brief, if I read it right, you talk about eventually expanding this towards universal eligibility to everyone to get free school meals. If the logical extension of that is that free school meals that are currently given should be given to children who are in receipt of them when they're off, should the universal school meal provision then be also given to everybody in terms of during term time? Are you saying that every single child in Northern Ireland would get both free school meals as an aspiration, and their parents would get a contribution towards feeding them when they're not at school? Just looking at the logical extension of your rationale, that would be the logical extension.
Well, I totally agree with what you're saying, but we didn't really discuss it. We just said that it should be down the line free school meals. It for everybody in school, it gives them a better starting place in school, and then if they get a better starting place in school, they can concentrate better in school. So then we can't. It's a small step like to tackle poverty. We're not coming here to say like this is going to solve child poverty, and we're just like looking at Scotland, where we're thinking, you know, Scotland, all children from P1 to P5 get school meals regardless of their financial income. I think all children should be able to eat in school, regardless.
Yeah, I think there's a really good argument for the particularly a really nutritious meal at school for everybody. I think in the long term it might pay for itself and more. You mentioned about every child should have that hot meal or that quality meal. How do we ensure that if we are giving parents an additional sum direct into their bank accounts, and this isn't being judgmental or critical, it's public money and we need to make sure that we actually it's spent wisely, but second of all, if we're spending it to help children, that's where it actually ends up going. How do we ensure that those parents or guardians do turn that money into a nutritious meal that the son or daughter's going to actually eat?
Yeah, well, we can't obviously 100% guarantee that it will go, but we're trusting that the parents, that they'll see those children in hunger and they would rather provide, they know that they've been given money to provide for their children that are hungry. I think if they're in absolute poverty, they will want to give their children the best start in life, so they will want to feed their children. And I think it's obviously a risk to give out public money in willing that it will happen, but I think if they're really desperate, they will feed their children because they want to give them the best start in life.
Final question, and I really love the work you do. Theresa May used a phrase that there's some people who are only just managing, and I hear a lot from constituents, and it's, you know, I used to do food bank volunteering, so you know, my parents grew up with very little, so there's no judgment of this, but we do have some people in society who are working really hard and just managing, and for them they often get a sense of where is the incentive for that, and there can be sometimes a degree of legitimate resentment if you then expand provision. How do we just manage that and make sure that we don't send the wrong signal to those who are only just missing out? Because there's always a cliff edge at some point when you have a benefit of some sort.
Again, as I said at the start, if there's any questions that you don't feel you've covered in your prep for this today, that's okay to decline to answer, because we understand there's only so much that you can prepare for in the time you have.
So I'm only looking actually help in that, in trying to pitch it to those people who are just missing out, and I just want to make sure that we don't undermine the legitimacy of something by not just bringing that cadre of people along. Because look, the people who are very wealthy, it doesn't matter. The people who have, you know, but there are people who just miss out in the borderline, and they really sometimes feel I'm knocking my pan in here.
Yeah, I think like the threshold of like school meals should be looked at, because obviously there is a global state of poverty, so it should be looked at, and people that are just working just to get by, they should be considered for free school meals, because at the end of the day, you know, everybody needs to be eating and to be comfortable, but it needs to be like looked at. The threshold needs to be raised for people who feel like they're working and not being rewarded. I feel like it could be looked at, but we haven't really covered that, as you said.
Very good.
So.
Thank you for your evidence. It was tremendous.
Thank you.
I'd love to see you back here as sitting on the blue seats in the Assembly, as also unionist MLAs. Were you putting that out there?
Yeah, take John's seat.
Thank you, John. And look, I think just on that final point, you know, we'd heard evidence from the Children's Commissioner around the numbers, the percentage of people who are living in poverty who actually are entitled to free school meals, and that raising that income threshold would potentially bring a lot more of those people in poverty into scope. So I thought your point there was very well made at the end, Sarah. And I think very much clearly one that you were thinking through in real time. So again, it's very impressive to be able to do this, because you can prepare as much as you want, but you never know what questions you're going to get asked. So we really do appreciate the Youth Assembly's input on this bill. So I mean, that brings our evidence session to an end on this item. I'm sure you're probably all ready for some fresh air. It's very warm in here, and look, we look forward to you to engaging with the Youth Assembly on other issues as our work continues for what's left of this mandate. So thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we're going to move on to the next item, or are we looking at what you want to sort of photograph? Just
before the meeting.
Okay.
Everybody's moved.
No problem. Okay, so just while the witnesses are making their way out, I would just remind we are still in open session of committee, so if members could just resume their seats, we'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is another briefing from the Youth Assembly. So we'll do a bit of a switch over here. Just take your time as long as you need to get settled. So it's another briefing from the Youth Assembly, and it's this time in relation to the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. So while everyone's getting settled, I would refer members to the Clerk's memo at page 62 of the pack, the Youth Assembly report provided at page 64 of your pack, and a response from the Department of Education on the definition of workforce. So you're all very welcome here today. Thank you for joining us. We have got, I think, 2 members who are Youth Assembly members who are planning to join us remotely. So far I can see Chloe McKenna. Can I check, is Dara McConnell also online? There we go. Yes, I've got Dara there. So I'm not quite sure how we'll navigate this with all the screens. So if I can just ask even the clerk to keep me right if there's any indications that I'm missing of anyone looking to come in. And then joining us in person today, we have Killian McGlinchey, Niamh Barnes and Imogen Neal. So you're all very welcome here today. Thank you. So unlike last time when I launched into my questions, I'm going to hand over to you, which is proper procedure. So please feel free to brief the committee on the Youth Assembly's response to this bill, and we will then move to question and answer. So I'm not sure who's opening up. Is it Imogen? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you to the Committee for Education for meeting with us today. My name is Imogen and I'm a member of the Northern Ireland Youth Assembly. On the 19th of June 2026, we met to consider the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. Today, we'll present the key findings from that discussion. The full report has already been sent and should be in your packs. This was an issue the Youth Assembly were particularly keen to discuss, as a number of members had direct or indirect experience of Irish medium education. Nearly 1 in 5 members who took part in the session had attended or currently attend an Irish medium school, while others had friends or family members in the sector. While just over half of the members said they had no personal experience of Irish medium education, this mix of perspectives allowed for a balanced discussion, combining lived experience with wider observations from different communities. This helped to ensure that the views we are presenting today reflect both the experiences of those directly involved in Irish medium education and the broader understanding of young people across Northern Ireland. Members were particularly interested in how the bill proposes to plan for future workforce needs, including how different groups, such as young people, would be involved in shaping those plans. I will now hand over to Niamh, who will begin setting out the Youth Assembly's understanding of the key issues facing Irish medium education.
Good afternoon, my name is Dhuibh and I will begin by discussing the key issues facing Irish medium education. The most frequent raised issue by Youth Assembly members has been staffing shortages. Many members highlighted a lack of teachers and wider school staff as a major priority across the sector. This has been seen as a significant challenge, affecting both available subjects and the overall quality of education. Members also raised concerns about the pressure this places on existing teachers, this with some describing increased work overload and strain due to limited staffing. Alongside staffing, members identified a number of other major issues such as funding, infrastructure and resources. Members constantly highlight the lack of funding as a key challenge, impacting teaching materials, school facilities, and the suitability of provision. Some shared examples of schools struggling to maintain Irish medium provision due to financial pressures. Members emphasised the need to view those challenges through a child's right lens, such as the right to access quality education, including adequate resources and suitability learning environment under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Members felt the current pressure on Irish medium education risks undermining this right. Overall, members describe this sector under significant pressure, with the staff shortaging, insufficient funding, and limited resources, forming the core challenges. I will now hand over to Killian, who will discuss whether Irish medium education currently receives enough support and views on the needs for this bill.
Dhuibh. My name is Killian, and the next area we will explore is the level of support for the Irish medium education and the need for this bill. Youth Assembly members genuinely agreed that the Irish medium education sector does not currently receive enough support. 85% of members agreed that the sector needs more support than it currently gets. Members also expressed a lack of confidence that sufficient progress would be made without legislation. 72% said they did not believe that the Department of Education would take enough action to improve the system without the implementation of a bill like this. This highlights a clear view that the legislation is needed to drive meaningful change and ensure accountability. When asked whether the bill will lead to real improvements, Youth Assembly members were generally cautiously optimistic. The most common response was that it would improve things to an extent, suggesting some uncertainty about how significant those improvements would be. Members recognised the bill would play an important role in strengthening the workforce, planning and raising the profile of Irish medium education. Some highlighted that it would legitimise the sector and its needs. It would represent a meaningful step forward. Members also welcomed that the bill places a duty on the department to prepare and publish a workforce plan for Irish medium education. They saw this as an important step in creating a more structured and accountable approach to workforce planning. However, there was a consistent message that workforce planning alone will not be enough to address the deeper challenges facing the sector. Members emphasised that funding remains the most critical issue, alongside ongoing pressures relating to staffing, resources and school infrastructure. Overall, while 86% of members believed the bill would have at least some positive impact, it was widely viewed as a partial solution. Members felt that it should be accompanied by practical action and sustained investment to deliver real and lasting improvements in Irish medium education. I will now hand over to Chloe, who is joining us online, and will discuss funding and whether this should be a priority.
Thank you, Killian. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chloe, and I'm going to discuss fairness and whether the bill goes far enough to address the challenges in Irish medium education. Members considered the fairness of this bill and debated whether it could be perceived as unfair to other schools. Most Youth Assembly members concluded that this was not a valid concern, viewing the bill as a necessary response to long-standing underinvestment in Irish medium education. Members emphasised that the aim is not to give Irish medium schools an advantage, but to ensure that young people being educated in the Irish medium sector have the same opportunities as young people from English medium schools. The Youth Assembly also explored whether the bill's focus on workforce planning and reporting is enough to address the many problems facing Irish medium education, such as resources, capital investment in buildings and funding pressures. Members highlighted the importance of ensuring that this bill is supported by meaningful investment and implementation. Members also discussed the importance of consultation in developing the workforce plan. It is particularly important to us that young people are included in this process. We note that the bill states that parents and pupils must be consulted in the preparation of the workforce plan, and we strongly welcome this. As the Youth Assembly, we believe it is essential that young people's voices are meaningfully included in decisions that affect their education. Members also felt that consultation must include those currently in Irish medium education, including preschools and Irish medium units within English medium settings, as well as young people in English medium schools who may wish to access the sector in future. I will now hand over to Dara, who is also joining us remotely and will conclude on behalf of the Youth Assembly.
Dhuibh, it's Mr. Dara.
Hello, and my name is Dara. I will give a summary of what we've heard so far and about the bill.
Going to translate himself afterward.
Youth Assembly members expressed overwhelming support for the Irish Medium Education Bill. When asked whether the Assembly should pass it, 94% said yes. Members clearly recognise both the value and challenges of Irish medium education. They highlighted its role in supporting language, culture and identity, alongside the significant pressures currently facing the sector. However, while members generally support the bill, they also suggested that it could be seen as a starting point rather than a complete solution. There was an emphasis on a need for additional action, particularly in relation to funding, staffing and resources. In summary, the Youth Assembly supports the aims of this bill and sees it as an important step towards addressing long-standing challenges in Irish medium education. Thank you for listening, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you all. Apologies for the noise outside. Hope everyone can still hear everything, particularly those joining online. So yeah, look, thanks as I said to your colleagues in the first briefing. Not an easy thing to come into a committee room and present, especially for the first time. So we really do appreciate your time and your input and the time you've clearly spent preparing for this. So it really is appreciated by the committee. I suppose I wanted to ask probably only one question. We'll see where we go with it. One of the things that came up through the debate in the Assembly chamber at the second stage of this bill, and that has been discussed in committee, and your report does reference it, is that there has maybe been a suggestion that the bill is in some way unfair to other school sectors, so that if you get a workforce plan for Irish medium, that it's unfair to other sectors. Your report was really clear. Your members didn't consider it was unfair to other sectors. Can you tell us a little bit more about why members felt that?
Well, coming from an Irish medium primary school, I seen, we were in wee small huts basically, and we were learning in these huts that had damp leaks, while all our schools had proper finished buildings, good playing fields. We used the local GA field as our playing field for break. We were borrowing land off the GA club to have the school, which shows how underfunded it actually is, which we think, if we could get rid of, having to learn Irish in a hut and actually having a school, it would bring, equality to learning either through English medium or Irish medium.
More about an equality issue rather than prioritising one sector over another. It's about fairness and equality.
I would just like to add, 68 do not think this is a fair, 60% do not think this is a fair argument, as Killian said, it isn't equal. The difference between Irish and medium schools between other schools are not equal, and the amount of teachers and support for children with special needs and stuff, literacy and numeracy problems, it's not the same. So, and we can see 68% of people agree with this, so yeah.
Thank you, Niamh. And Dara, I think you'd indicated there on this as well.
Yeah, just as the member who has personal first-hand, I go to an Irish medium school, I understand the staffing pressures. There is staffing pressures, and it is pretty catastrophic. I think, especially if you go and you read the Coyle and the Gail Scully Act, if you read their insight report from May 2025, which was a year ago, so I'd assume, and I know the problems have got worse, there is problems with teachers. Irish medium in itself, there's only 2 schools. The schools are too small. The schools have had to start turning, there used to be an open doors policy, they've had to start turning students away because there simply isn't enough space. The pressure is that children can't go and do what they believe in and what they enjoy in Irish, which is their right. It's their legal right to speak Irish in their life. And they're getting held back from that because of the staffing pressures that these schools face. And I see it day to day. So to sort of bring it up as a thing of taking away from English medium schools, I find really disrespectful, because it disrespects all the hard work that these people have to face and the challenges that me and the rest of my community through learning Irish have to face day to day.
Thank you, Dara. And just to be clear, I was clear from second stage debate on this bill. I fully support it. I just wanted to give you all the opportunity to respond to some of the things that have come through as sort of repeated themes. And I would share your view that there is an equality and fairness issue here in relation to Irish medium education. And I note that the passion you speak to this issue with, Dara, and it's great to see the passion that you have for receiving your education in an Irish medium setting. Look, that's all from me. So I'll bring in the Deputy Chair. I'm assuming wants to come in, and then open up to other members.
Thank you, Chairperson, and you're all very welcome. Thank you very much for coming before the committee here today.
And thanks for coming to give evidence to the committee today. And just because a few of you mentioned it, it was originally my intention that this would have been a much broader ranging bill. So it would have covered issues like bespoke resources for Irish medium education. We know that teachers spend a lot of their time in Irish medium schools translating material from English into Irish. And we also know that some Irish medium schools are in a very bad state of disrepair, some in mobile classrooms for over 30 years, some closer to 40 years. So I would have liked to have included all of that in a broad ranging Irish medium education bill. But the Speaker determined that all members' bills had to be narrowly focused. And for that reason, I decided that we would focus on workforce. And workforce isn't just about teachers, just not teachers in post-primary school, although we know there are shortages there, particularly shortages of teachers with who teach specialist subject, STEM subjects in particular, because it's almost impossible in the north to do a degree course that includes a STEM subject and Irish. That's almost impossible. So things like that need to change. There's also an issue when it comes to providing support for children with special needs. So speech and language therapists coming into an Irish medium school to give therapy to a child who perhaps has Irish as their first language, to give that therapy in English. Similarly with educational psychologists and so on. And then also preschool children, there's a shortage there of professionally trained teachers who can teach children at the very early stages of their school careers. So this is quite broad ranging in terms of workforce. But I was actually surprised by some of the results in your survey, particularly the one about with a law like this, do you think the Department of Education would take enough action? And only 6% of the respondents said no. And that's amazing insofar as, I mean, I presume the Youth Assembly is made up from young people right across the community. They're not just from one community. And that to me suggests that people even who haven't any involvement in Irish medium education recognise the difficulties that sector faces, and the best way to remedy that is by bringing forward legislation like this bill. Would any of you like to comment on that?
I think, it comes to an extent, sitting talking about bringing change to the language. 2016 is when really I started paying attention to Actinish, which is, Cartadini, Cartagena, which, that's 10 years now, and I haven't seen a lot of stuff actually being done about it. There's still that lack of staff. I remember when I was in primary school, there was classroom assistants in that couldn't speak a word of Irish, in a Gaelscoil. And, it just kind of seems as if they're there's time for talking, but there's also needs to be direct action followed by the talking, which, there has been a long time for talking. I'm sorry if I went off on a rant there.
Dara wanted to come in, I think.
Yeah, just to agree with him, there is a sort of feeling, it may not be an attitude directly shared by the Department of Education. I'm sure they are very agreed in doing their job, but there's a certain education, attitude within the Irish community that Irish medium education is not viewed on the same level as English medium education or integrated education. And I feel like a bill like this really help quell those feelings of worry that if not legally required to fund Irish medium education, that funding will stop. Now, I have no doubt that the Department of Education is fully for Irish medium education. However, it would quell some of those fears that I feel some of the community do have.
Okay, just one other question from me, and Dara, this would probably be a good question for you, given that you're attending a post-primary Irish school. I presume it's College First, yeah. And are any of you? I'm asking this to all of you, but are any of you aware of any young people who had to leave an Irish medium school because there wasn't a particular subject available, and they then had to go to an English medium school?
Yeah, I can say it from first hand. I went to an Irish medium nursery and I continued to do P1, P2, P3. And due to lack of teachers, lack of funding, I was forced to leave that, resulting in me losing all of my Irish. And only now, I'm doing Irish GCSE now. So I'm regaining that, and I've recently earned my silver fáinne. But for all those years, I loved being in an Irish medium school, and I feel that I almost have been taken away from me because of the lack of funding and the I don't feel the rights are as same as English speaking.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think for my year group it's maybe 150 to 190 people, and I would know I think there's maybe 120 are staying on and doing A levels, and I think about of those 120, I think about 70 or 80 are leaving the school simply because there's not the subjects they want. People want to do certain subjects for their A levels, and if they're not provided, then they do have to move. I've had a situation of that where I want to do a particular subject, and the teacher was there. There is a teacher with that specialisation, but they can't do the subject because the basic subject that they already teach doesn't have enough teachers. And that's the problem that there is. There's not enough teachers to teach specialist subjects.
Maybe have to draw a line just in the interest of time
Okay.
on that one. Any other indications on this? No, thank you, Deputy Chair. Any other indications for this panel? Nothing at the moment, no. So thank you all for your time and your evidence. It's been two great evidence sessions today, and just to thank you on behalf of the committee again for coming today and giving up your time. Thank you very much.
We have a photo.
Picture okay, so I think the clerk would like to get a photo, if that's okay. So I don't know the best way to set that up where you want everybody.
Oh, yeah, can just come in and stand behind
You
you.
come and stand behind you. Yeah.
Go in standing behind.
We've got office of fitness or something there. 24th of September.
Sit in here beside Michelle, no?
Yeah, grand, yeah.
Whatever you think. It's like
Middleton.
Brilliant work, guys.
Right, we might have to get you to move, sorry, just to accommodate Saul. This wheelchair, is that okay?
Yeah. Raises name for
Maybe just turn off the live feed, Jim. Could we just turn off the live feed? Yeah.
Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 Sound. Committee Room 29.
Okay, members, so that is us back into the public session, and that takes us to item 9 on the agenda, and it is another oral briefing on the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill, and it is a briefing from Dhuibh Mischel, Principal of Bunscoil and tSléibhe, who I think I got the pronunciation right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Do my best. So I'd refer members to the briefing paper that's provided at page 30 of tabled papers. And so we're very grateful to have Dhuibh with us here today, and I think we'll be bringing a specific primary focused angle to the evidence, as we have heard so far from post primary principals. So the evidence is welcome today. So you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us on a very warm day in the committee room. Hopefully a few less bodies in the room, the temperature might cool down a little bit. But I'm really happy to hand over to you at this stage to brief the committee. I would ask for an opening presentation of up to 10 minutes, and then we'll move into question and answer from there. So thank you very much.
Okay, Gurmai. Shortly, Dhuibh.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am Dhuibh Mitchell, and I was born and raised in the Shaws Road, Gaeltacht. I was raised with Irish, and English was my second language, which means Irish was my first spoken language. I attended the first Bunscoil, and I have been teaching in Gaelscoileanna since the start of the 90s. Irish is the spoken language of my children and family, and it is great to have the opportunity to listen to the Irish language being spoken today.
Important politicians, thank you very much for listening to me today. I have 6 short points to make, and I'll see if I can get through them in 10 minutes. Coming from a preschool and primary, and I have to stress the preschool aspect of this because Irish medium schools and education are based on an immersion process that starts 2 years before primary school. So number 1 is equality and legal obligation. Irish medium education is not a niche preference. It is part of the statutory and policy framework here. And under existing legislation, as you know, there is a duty to promote and facilitate education where there is a parental demand. However, if there are no commitments in law to promote Irish medium education, it must also ensure adequate staffing to deliver it adequately. Otherwise, this right exists only on paper. Secondly, demand versus capacity. Demand for Irish medium education has grown significantly since I was in school. Many schools face difficulty recruiting qualified Irish-speaking teachers, over-reliance on temporary or substitute staff, and limited subject provision at post-primary. I'll also add on to that adequately qualified preschool staff as well. And by staff, I'm not merely talking about teaching staff, but classroom assistants and playgroup supervisors as well. Without sufficient staffing, parental demand cannot be met, leading to inequality of access and long waiting lists or restricted subject choice. Number 3, unique staffing challenges in Irish medium education. Unlike English medium education, Irish medium education requires teachers who are fully qualified and competent to teach through Irish. Subject specialists, especially in math, science, etc., who can deliver Irish, deliver an Irish and Irish-speaking classroom assistance. Given the big developments in special educational needs of late, Irish medium schools are struggling more so again to facilitate an adequate classroom assistant provision in primary schools. Staffing shortages are structural, not incidental. A standard recruitment model cannot meet these needs without targeted intervention. The unique immersion education has never been resourced adequately. The acquisition of another language in preschool requires additional staffing to facilitate the process, yet the IM sector usually has a higher than normal pupil-teacher ratio. Fourth, educational outcomes and quality. Insufficient staffing leads to larger class sizes, which is my reality, reduced subject availability, increased workload, teacher burnout, and Irish medium teachers have to create their own resources. That I know that has been raised again and again. This directly affects student outcomes. If Irish medium pupils receive a narrower curriculum due to staffing shortages, this creates inequality in educational outcomes, which contradicts the principle of parity. It also drives a narrative that Irish medium education cannot provide a broad and balanced curriculum. Cultural and linguistic sustainability. Irish medium schools are key to preserving and growing the Irish language and supporting broader cultural and community identity. Staffing shortages threaten not just schools, but the long-term survival and development of the Irish language community. An associated question I would have about that is why the Department of Education still hasn't published an Irish medium strategy after 55 years of existence. Number 6, economic and strategic investment. Investing in staffing creates skilled employment, builds a bilingual workforce, and aligns with wider economic and tourism opportunities. Supporting Irish medium staffing is not a cost burden, in my view. It is an investment in skills, culture, and regional development. Current pressures on staff in Irish medium schools are curricular in terms of literacy. There are, in English medium schools, a plethora of novels and readers in English, not one in the way of a broad and balanced scheme in Irish medium. In numeracy, again, lots of resources, both online and hard copy in English, with next to zero in Irish, with staff constantly searching for writing their own and translating materials in their own time. The last resource created for Irish medium schools in mathematics was over 20 years ago. If you asked in an English medium schools how many schemes or resources they've had in the space of 20 years, they probably couldn't tell you there've been that many. The world around us, the rest of the arts, they're exactly the same. In terms of SEN, we could be here tomorrow if we went along that route. However, in short, there are no bilingual or Irish medium diagnostic testing, no intervention resources. I noted from the previous meeting that a member had said that there are no educational psychologists coming in with Irish medium. Not one single recruitment has ever been made for a literacy support or outreach support teacher in an Irish medium school. This isn't just to kick DE, by the way, this adds to current staffing workload because we have to pick up the pieces there. Lots of Senkos work in their own time in ALNCs to provide support groups for themselves, to create resources, to assess and to try to provide a more inclusive environment for children with special needs on their own. Several years ago, the Irish Medium Ring-Fenced Fund for SEA was dismantled, or de-ring-fenced, I think was the term that was used at the time. And it seems to us that this was an act to allow for the chipping away of the fund to meet SEA's other priorities. And I would be interested to know what the figure spent on Irish Medium by CCA today is compared to what it was when the fund was there. The resulting financial decrease has added to the staff burden in the sector, as we have yet again had to pick up the pieces. Another example of this is the recently produced Literacy Inclusion Toolkit that was created by the Department of Education and Education Authority. And at the launch in autumn of 2025, we asked how this could be implemented in an Irish medium school. We were told that the toolkit was produced for mainstream schools, which is quite insulting. So that meant not Irish medium schools. This was just another example of DE and EA's long-standing record of not taking their responsibility seriously when it comes to Irish medium schools and what we have to do in the schools. As a result of that complaint, a small team of 4 Senkos were hurriedly assembled recently and just finished after long hours in their own time, mostly, bringing this to a point of trial. We had to get substitute teachers into the schools to allow that to happen. The current demands on the system, transforming statutory assessment in the independent review for Northern Ireland, Chapter 12, 12.3, the panel proposes a rapid development project to produce Irish medium curriculum linked assessments to literacy, numeracy and science, as there are none. And in the last 50 years, we have had to create those ourselves. In 26-27, coming up, tSléibhe will begin to roll out the new assessment framework, which was launched by the Minister for Education by introducing the new phonics and multiplication checks in years 2 and years 5 of primary schools. We have yet to hear from DE or anybody else what this looks like in an Irish medium school, because folks, the phonics in an English medium school just doesn't sit just as nicely in an Irish medium school because it's a different language. That hasn't been produced. That will result in us sending more staff out and mostly working in their own time to try and produce a resource well after it's been implemented in an English medium school. The very review of Northern Ireland, of the Northern Ireland curriculum, recently, last Friday, we received emails from the Education Authority and the Department of Education to say that there would be drafting groups for Irish, for English and biliteracy in Irish medium schools. This will require up to 20 days out from schools from September to December. We are already struggling to fill posts without having to send more staff in to fill in the holes that DE and EA are not filling by providing a proper workforce for the Irish, not just in schools, but to support schools. More the same with tSléibhe, more to do with Encrat more to do with the literacy strategy that has not taken account of Irish medium schools. We do not have enough staff as it is. We rarely have enough subs. And as a result of DE and EA not planning for or refusing to plan, we are then asked to provide staff on what could only be a hodgepodge approach in the absence of a strategy. The continuous failure to plan ahead and listen to the sector means that we are going round in circles. To conclude, this adds up to a significant failure to address the chronic workforce and workload issues within Irish medium schools.
Thank you. And I'll probably pick up on a theme that I've raised on most briefings on this bill, and it would be around the SEN, and you did make particular reference to that, and I'm assuming in a primary context when you need those support services early, it's particularly relevant. Can you give me an insight into, in your school or from your colleagues' experience, what is the impact of not having those support services, educational psychology? You even referenced classroom assistants, and I think some of the youth assembly members referenced that of having experience in school of classroom assistants being in there who couldn't speak Irish, speech and language therapists, those sort of services. What's the impact on that on both the children who need the services and on the staff working in the school?
An easy one, Nick, would be that currently there is nobody qualified to diagnose a bilingual dyslexic child here. And to get that diagnosis, children in Irish medium schools have to wait until round about P5 because it requires the diagnosis to take place in English. In other countries around the world, in Europe and elsewhere, jurisdictions have developed tools to diagnose dyslexia in Indigenous children, in bilingual children, in Europe, in trilingual children. Nothing here. In an English medium school, that would be as early as P2 or P3. So there's a 2-year immediate gap there where intervention, in a 7-year primary phase, 2 years is huge. So that's just one very sharp example. But it's broader than that. There's always a question mark about the diagnosis and the assessment process because we don't have any Irish-speaking experts in that. And when asked about this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the answer comes back, well, funding, it takes too long. It takes time. It will take time. It'll take time for universities and linguists and therapists and psychologists to come together and work those up. But start it because we need it. We need it now. So it's always the same excuse. It'll take too long. We don't have the funding.
And it's clear from the evidence this committee's heard on SEN more broadly that all schools are feeling that pressure. But if you're building in further delay in one particular sector for your children, and I think the Youth Assembly were clear on that seems to me like a clear inequality and indicates why this bill is an appropriate intervention at this time. I just wanted to get your view on something. We've had some correspondence in from the department because there had been some queries around how the department would interpret the phrase workforce, and they've come back to say that it should reasonably include, which I feel is encouraging, but it'd be good to get your sense. Teaching and non-teaching staff within Irish medium education settings, staff employed by the Education Authority and other education bodies who support the delivery of education services in IME settings. So it's broadening it beyond just the teachers and classroom assistants in the classroom. Now there is a question, probably a broader one for us to discuss about that they don't look like they're going to be looking at health staff. But in principle, would it be a welcome step if when they're workforce planning, they're also including those EA support staff and not just those actually employed in a school?
The Irish medium journey starts with the immersion process. And in my school, that starts with children who are 3 years of age. And they are, we have a pre-pre, it's called. So you have primary, and then you have nursery or preschool, and then the pre. It's a 2-year programme about language acquisition. We advertised twice this year for a supervisor for the preschool class, qualified, level 5 qualified. Not one applicant did we get. So it's vitally important that we recognise that it's not just teaching staff, not just specialists, that we are hugely dependent on all school staff. So classroom assistants who not just speak Irish, not just have qualifications and what they're going to do, but also need other areas and avenues to develop those. Nursery teaching, nursery classroom assistants, and playgroup as well. Irish medium education is built on the starting point of a playgroup, and that's 3 to 4, and we need that as well. So it couldn't be and shouldn't be just as narrow as the teaching staff. It'll be very welcome, but it's a broader ask.
Yeah, no, certainly I would share that view. That the broader the definition that is applied to workforce, the better I think, and the more effective it will be. Thank you for that. I'll bring the deputy chair in, and then any other members who want to indicate.
I got a Carly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Philip. It was very interesting.
I mean, often we hear, about the difficulties associated with Irish medium. It's almost as if it's an irritation. And so if we were to go along and say to the Minister, we need 40 teachers for STEM subjects, or we need 40 assistants for preschool or playgroup supervisors or whatever. I mean, is that a big deal for you? Is it possible to do that relatively quickly?
It seems to me that, there's a recent example of this in West Belfast where pupils in post-primary couldn't access design technology, GCSE, and there wasn't a teacher in any of the schools, not just Irish medium, but English medium as well. And I don't have the exact figures on it, but I think there were 45 teachers that have signed up to, and the schools have signed up to an access course of some sort that they'll do in their own time in the evenings over a series of weeks and months that will allow them to then provide GCSE design technology. This is actually happening, this is live, and the Department of Education have to be involved in that. And I don't have the ins and outs of it, but it seems to me that when there's common sense and when common sense prevails, it's easy enough. Obviously there's funding involved in that, but I don't think it's difficult. I don't see how it is difficult whenever there are shortages, whenever you can see it, whenever the data shows it, whenever the evidence is overwhelming. I think you have to get over all of that and say, okay, so at what point do we then move from, okay, having a broad general agreement that this is actually happening to what are we going to do about it? So recently, locally in West Belfast, practitioners, post-primary colleagues will be able to tell you more about this, but practitioners have come together with schools, with officials, and created a pathway. So,
and what about international examples or experience? Any knowledge of that?
I would strongly suggest that you invite our New Zealand colleagues all the way over. Look, 10 or 15 years ago, I visited Canada to learn about the bilingual system that they have there in Toronto. It was fascinating. They have a dedicated workforce strategy in Canada. They have the same in New Zealand. They have the same in Wales. I believe Scotland and Gaelic are trying to do something similar. There have been some initiatives here and some initiatives on an all-island basis in terms of access routes. But internationally, it's happening. Internationally, it's been proven to work and to lessen the effect that staffing shortages have on Indigenous and minority languages. So the data is there, the research is there, the practice is there internationally. We just don't understand as a sector why it's not here.
All we need now is the will. Margaret, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I've not got any other indications. John, just had you indicated?
Yeah, it's kind of been answered.
It's been dealt with. Okay. You had an easy ride today then.
Well, that's a lot less intimidating than I thought.
We're a friendly bunch, honest.
Chair, if I could just...
Yes, certainly, Cara, come on in.
If I could just come in, just to say thank you so much. I found that a really informative session, and what we've seen over the past number of weeks is I've just found it so eye-opening. It's almost with every session on Irish medium education and the challenges in workforce and early years, it gets worse and worse and worse, the reality that our young people are facing. And I don't think anybody could sit and listen and compare English-speaking schools and Irish-speaking schools and not recognise there's undoubtedly a two-tier system. So just want to thank you sincerely for coming today, and I think it speaks to the importance of this bill as well. Thank you, Gurmagit.
Thank you, Cara. Well, that is us. That is us at the end of our evidence session, and I think we'll obviously ensure that evidence is then fed through into the final committee report, and we're moving towards moving out of committee stage on this bill. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you. We're going into closed session, isn't that right? Okay. So are members agreed that we just, other than adding the evidence from today's session to the bill papers and for to be reflected in the committee report, no further actions arising from that? No, we're agreed. I'm going to propose for our next item, item 10, which is the informal clause by clause consideration of the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill and some discussion of the amendments that the Bills Office had been working on for committee, that we move into a closed session if members are agreed. Agreed?
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
do we need Hansard before we proceed with this?
We'll minute it anyway,
Yes.
and they will do it. If they can't do it in the room, they'll do it retrospectively, maybe in September. So,
okay.
But we should try to have them if they're here. Yes, they're here.
No problem. So, members, that is us back into open session of the committee, and just for anyone.
Sorry, I've seen Julie's hand up. It's just went down there.
Oh, sorry, Julie, were you looking to come in there?
Yeah, Chair, just previously, I just wanted to state that what David was saying was a party position, so it was myself as well, not just for David. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and we'll note that.
Okay.
So, in terms of items discussed while in closed session, the committee received a briefing from the Bills Office on the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill in terms of some amendments that we had sought advice on, arising both from evidence received from the Department of Education and the Examiner of Statutory Rules, and it was agreed that the committee would seek to bring forward those amendments as committee amendments, and that will be reflected in our deliberations next week. And it was also noted that both David and Julie, while they, in our informal clause-by-clause consideration of that bill, did not seek to divide on each clause of the bill, wanted to restate their party position that they were not in support of the principles of the bill and reserve the right to amend or vote in different ways when it reaches later stages of the Assembly processes. So item 11 on the agenda then is the formal clause-by-clause consideration of the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. So there are a couple of bits of correspondence to note, but we have discussed some of those in closed session already, and that's at page 89. We have correspondence from the Department of Education providing advice in relation to scrutinising of the bill. But unless there are any comments on that correspondence, I would advise members that the task before us now is for the committee to formally determine and set out its position on each of the proposed amendments and each clause of this bill, and the committee will divide as necessary, and all decisions will be final. So I want to bring David in at this point, I think, just to reflect a party position from the DUP, and then we'll move from there.
Thanks very much, Chair. Again, just to restate, we're not going to divide committee on these clauses. Our position is that this bill is unnecessary and much of the work is being taken forward by the department in any case. And as a result, what we do here is without prejudice to what we may do at later stages in the chamber. But we will not be seeking to divide on the clauses. But that is not to be taken as tacit support for the clauses. Thanks.
Thank you, David, and I'm sure that can then be reflected in the committee report. John?
My position is the same for our party.
Okay, so noted also from John's perspective. Okay, I can remind members that if the committee is not content with a particular clause, the committee can register its formal opposition to the question that the clause stand part of the bill, and that would ensure the clause is debated at consideration stage. So it is anticipated that the committee will conclude all formal deliberations at today's meeting. So if members are content and have no further questions to raise, we'll move now into the formal clause-by-clause deliberation. Are members content that we proceed?
Right. Clause
1. So this clause imposes a duty upon the Department of Education to prepare a workforce plan for the Irish medium education sector. One committee amendment has been proposed on this clause, and that is Amendment 1. Clause 1, page 1, line 18, at the end, insert B, brackets, B, close brackets, the Education Authority, and is the committee content with Amendment 1? Content? Agreed. So we have, I think, agreement on that, and subject to that amendment's inclusion in the draft committee report, is the committee content with Clause 1 as drafted? Are we content?
Content.
Clause 2 sets out the bill's commencement and the date from which the duties in the bill will apply, and short title. No amendments have been proposed to this clause. Is the committee content with Clause 2 as drafted? Agreed. All content. So I then just seek members' view on the long title of the bill, and the question is that the committee content with the long title of the bill? Content. Okay, that concludes the formal clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, and the clerk can keep me right. We will consider then the final committee report at our meeting next week.
Yes.
Okay. All agreed. So we would then be moving on to two further items, which I will suggest we will take in closed session. So that is consideration of draft reports into both the Relationships and Sexuality Education Inquiry, and then item 13, which is the strategic review of current SEN provision and transformation agenda. So two draft reports. Do we have agreement to move into closed session? Agreed.
Committee Room 29, Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, Sound.
Okay, so we're back into open session of the committee. Two items were discussed, so two draft reports, one into the committee's inquiry into RSE and the other into the committee's inquiry into SEN. It was agreed that members would provide feedback on both draft reports with a view to signing off the RSE report next week, and with a hope that we could do the same for SEN, but members were very conscious of the significant degree of public interest in the issue of SEN and wanted to be sure that the draft report had all of the scrutiny from members that they felt they needed. So that may just be deferred till after recess, but we'll keep a watching brief on that at next week's meeting. We have already covered correspondence at an earlier part of our meeting, so the only other substantive item on the agenda is item 15, which is the Forward Work Programme. So I'd refer members to page 364 of your pack, where the Forward Work Programme is in place. I'll ask the clerk to speak to that very briefly in case there are any changes or updates or anything we should be aware of, but I think really next week's meeting is largely focused on getting PMBs over the line to close those committee stages off for the two PMBs we're considering.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to flag for
I mean, we do
something?
have a budget update, and there you recently had correspondence from the Finance Committee that will be helpful, propose some areas to probe there, but really I suppose you're asking mainly about what might happen if a budget isn't agreed in July. And so September is beginning to populate a little bit with Book Trust, the update on RE on the 16th, an early appearance by the Perm Sec, a pre-legislative briefing on 16 to 18 legislation, an integrated education kind of day there with IAF, NICE and DE updating, provisionally NICMA and Open University Anaphonics academic. And Victoria Graff has been in touch just during the meeting to say that she's got an event on the 24th of September she would like to invite you all to, so I'll get the data for that and give it to you next week.
That would be great. And the only other thing I'd want to flag is just I got a sponsorship request through for the committee's event in the Educational Underachievement, which I think came through for the 29th of September. So it was just, if that is getting locked in, just as early as that can be out to members to get into diaries, that would be great. It'd be obviously good to get good attendance at that.
Super.
Okay, anything to add on Forward Work Plan? No. If there's anything, even over the summer, of particular issues that you would like to be prioritising, we do have the inspections bill, but we have lots of scope in the work plan for other issues, and there's been plenty of things where we've been declining briefings because we've had so much legislation, so we might have more scope to hear from other stakeholders, so please do feed that information through to either myself or the clerk. Okay, so are members content to endorse the Forward Work Programme as drafted? Great. So then we have item 16, any other business? Is there any other business? And item 17 is date, time and place of next meeting. That will be Wednesday the 1st of July, 2 p.m. in room 29 at Parliament Buildings and online. And that leaves me to put the question. The committee meeting does now adjourn. Are we agreed? Agreed.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29. Sound.